Hi, I'm Sarah Gonzalez. Welcome to the news and why it matters. Going to get to the top stories, but first I want to introduce our special guest, Ben Ferguson.
Yay! Do we get myself, right?
Yay! Nationally syndicated radio host who I have known for many, many years. So
good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. All right, Stu, what's the top story for you?
Something the media has been warning about for a while that could be coming happened today, and it's a pretty interesting development in the Trump situation.
Okay, Jason.
Beto O'Rourke, he's just a great guy. He's swell, you know, and that's
also a fellow Hispanic.
Yeah, right.
Well, with a name like O'Rourke.
Yeah, O'Rourke, obviously, yes.
Anyway, but yeah, there might be a different narrative along those lines.
Okay, Ben.
The AG, it's kind of an important job. The question is do we need a new one? And how often do we need a new one? And does the president have the right to get a new one if he wants a new one? I think that's going to be a very interesting thing now between now and the midterm elections.
Okay. All right. Stu.
So for this whole time since Cohen has been out there talking and maybe previewing that he might be turning on Trump, there has been one thing that several reporters who cover the White House really closely have been speculating about, which is that Cohen is a small fish compared to Alan Weisselberg. He's the CFO of the Trump organization. He's the guy that has, you know, all the access to the money and all the transactions that have gone back in the organization for many, many years. And, you know, Trump properly dismisses Cohen as sort of a small figure. I mean, he did handle some of the shadier things that Trump has done, you know, with relationships and things like that, the sexy stuff in the tabloids. But you know, Weisselman was really the guy at the center of all the transactions in the organization over that whole period. And there's been speculation for a while that he would be a big fish to get if he took immunity and really started turning on Trump. It could actually be a big deal. Today, it came out that he did get that immunity in the Cohen trial. We don't know what that means yet. We don't know if it means he has said anything bad about Trump or if Trump did anything wrong. It's way too early to speculate on that. But if Trump did something wrong, Weisselberg would know about it. And if he has immunity, he could actually come out with it. It would be interesting. At least here, we should at least get an answer at the end.
I'm interested in two things about Cohen and the deal that he got. At the end of the day, he basically agreed, I'll give you what you want me to say because of the things I did in my business life. I will give you the, hey, I broke a law that I necessarily maybe not have broken by paying women, not through the campaign, on a deal that we've been trying to get since 2011, 12, 13, 14, and 15 with these women that were involved. I mean, it wasn't like this happened, the first contact of I want cash was 2 months before the election. And then he takes this deal, which really this deal, 5 years is a long time to go to prison. I mean, 5 years is 5 years. That's how bad this stuff was against him in his business life. I wonder, though, if the COO of, or CFO of Trump and this that knows everything, if he got immunity there, which we found out, as you just mentioned, how much was there really damaging information? Because clearly it wasn't enough to get, 5 years?
Yeah.
Pretty good deal for a guy that was going to go to prison for probably a lot longer than that. I just wonder if there's not as much there as they were hoping for.
I think it might be true. I don't like this kind of constant obsession with Trump, right? I wish the investigators, and, you know, we'll see when the report comes out what is actually in there, but it seems like they're so focused on getting Trump in the investigation that we're obsessed with this one man. And I understand
and they just want one thing to say, you did wrong, and here is a charge, and we're going to own you. And I think that the part that concerns me about the government's reach now is it's very clear that everything now is about to close in on Trump's family.
Yeah.
It's about how much can we make it hurt, which is the same thing, by the way, that people do in Mexico. If they want to take advantage of you, if they want to hurt you, and that somebody said to me the other day, an investigator, you know, this is exactly what the cartels did. If they couldn't get to you, they get to your family. And if the government couldn't get to you, they would get to your family.
They did this with Flynn, too.
Right, and it's the same thing with Flynn and his son and everything else. And it's in this pattern of, okay, well, I may not be able to hurt you, but I'm going to hurt everyone around you so that it does hurt you. I think it's a very scary precedent.
Yeah, and look, I think it seems relatively clear that Cohen, who I can't imagine he made it through a day without doing something illegal in his life. I think the day he was born, he probably at least jaywalked. He jay-crawled across the street. You know, he was shady from the beginning. Manafort has been shady for decades.
Everybody warned him.
Yeah, everybody warned him, and he still hired these people, which I think was a really bad decision. But it's okay. Like, if what comes out of this are real things against criminals, and they get punished for them, and nothing touches Trump, I think all the mainstream media will be very upset about that outcome, But that's still a good outcome for our society if it's done correctly.
Well, and the people that he surrounded himself with, I go back to he wasn't a politician. If you remember, why did he even hire Paul Manafort? It was because he was terrified of a brokered convention, and he had no idea how to win one, and Ted Cruz clearly did. And so this guy named Paul Manafort, who worked with Reagan, came to him and said, I know how the rules of a convention work. I've done this before. You need me in case this goes to a brokered convention. And out of pure stress, duress, whatever, he said, I have to have you, because he had no one else to do the job.
Yeah.
My point is Manafort was a bad guy. People that were in politics knew he was a bad guy. But he still was around a Bob Dole. The president's correct to quote that. He was still around Ronald Reagan, which was correct to talk about that.
True.
And then afterwards, he exploited those contacts to make a whole lot of money. I don't think that means that the president, though, was involved in any type of collusion, any type of Russia. He made a split-second decision. He was desperate for someone that could understand a convention rules, and that's the only reason why Paul Manafort's name even exists today.
I'm not convinced that he, what's his name, the CFO of Trump?
Weisenberg.
I'm not convinced that he's actually flipped. A lot of people were like kind of reporting that's might have what happened. I'm not convinced of that. I think it's still a kind of a following the chain of, I guess you can kind of sniff around where they're going in this investigation. Especially when you looked at the court papers from Cohen's trial, where they mentioned that they had evidence that there actually was, or they alluded to that there was like encrypted messages that they had. They alluded to all the papers when they raided Cohen's office. Like it's in the sequence of how these the people that they're going after now, including Weisenberg, the sequence now seems to suggest that I'm just speculating that maybe that's who they have next, as far as that might be what's in some of that evidence. Yeah. They actually have maybe a conversation or a message that went between
the
Cohen.
tapes are the most damaging thing out there. We don't know what's on tapes. We don't know what's on the record on tapes. We don't know what Omarosa had, and she's been taping since The Apprentice. We don't know what Michael Cohen has on tapes.
Omarosa had that very damning, video of Cohen getting on a plane.
That was devastating.
That was couldn't recover from that one.
It could also be that Weiselberg had just flipped on Cohen. Right, and that was maybe the source of a lot of the Cohen information they got initially. It could easily just be that. We don't know what it is. I will say, going back to our point about who he hires, right? Like Omarosa is a great one. There's no one in politics telling him he should hire Omarosa.
Should never hired her.
Should have never hired her.
Yeah.
I mean,
she had no business being anywhere within 1,000 miles of the campaign.
Yeah.
She never should have been at the White House. And I give a lot of criticism to Trump when he does things that I disagree with. His initial staff, which was a non-political staff, was horrendous. Yeah. But he also figured out pretty quickly that these people are horrendous in politics, and you're out of here, you're out of here, you're out of here, you're out of here. Yeah. And now, if you notice, even with all the instability that the media said has been around Donald Trump, if you look at his staff now, it's been very stable since he got rid of that first wave of people.
Yeah. Oh, sure. You can't complain with a lot of them. I think we could all, pretty much, agree that everyone that's in there now, is a whole lot better than who he had before. But I think a lot of those early hires, like Flynn, even Omarosa,
Steve Bannon.
But they were all kind of like these legacy loyalty picks.
Yes.
They were the people that jumped on with him.
Day one. He's a loyalist.
Exactly.
Donald Trump, he said to me, you joke, you were so nasty to me, talking about me, during the primaries. You were so nasty to me. And he goes, and then it was like a religious, I think he said something like a religious evolution in front of my eyes, when finally during the general, you started to defend me. It's classic Trump-esque, right? And we laughed about it because, and I told him, I said, when you're right, I will give you full credit. When I think you make a bad decision, I will say it. Omarosa was a terrible hire. Clearly, he knew he needed to get out of the White House. They also knew she was a liability, which is exactly why they wanted to give her a job afterwards. Inside. It's classic. And you know what? If Omarosa, I knew the liability that she was, I would have, and I was in his shoes, I would have said, give her a job and let's just make this go away. Absolutely. I don't have a problem with that.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I just had a problem with the initial hire. Right. But you're right. Yeah, once you realize she's leaving, she's obviously a psychopath. So, pay her whatever you want. But it's just it's been, I think, you're right, an interesting turn, and it's been a legitimate improvement from those early days when it comes to the people surrounding him, and that's been, I think, a cause for good policy development. And that early staff created a lot of issues that's taken a lot of time to solve, though.
So why this matters, just to sum it all up, is we don't know if it's going to cause a big fuss yet, but we need to keep an eye on it.
Trump likes to call everything that is critical of him fake news, right. And a lot of times he's right. Like, there's a lot of things that they report that are just ridiculous, I think. But some of the really good reporters around the White House have been talking about this as a massive development for months. And the fact that they've been hinting that, and then it's actually now come true, is interesting. That was one of the things that people talked about. Maybe it's not going to be, Russian collusion, but maybe it's some deal he did 10 years ago they're going to go after him on. If they investigate and go through that whole organization, look, Trump wasn't a politician. He wasn't thinking in those terms. He was thinking in a New York real estate terms, and God only knows what happened. I mean, he has already been in trouble throughout his real estate career for things like hiring illegal immigrants and illegal racist, policies when it comes to people living in his building and things at the casino that he had to deal with. That's
getting awards from Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson.
Right, yeah.
All while doing that, right?
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
And that was part of that culture, right? Yeah. Like, when you're in New York City, you've got big friends, you guys swim in the same circles. Like, there's lots of deals that go on, and so it's going to be interesting if he actually is worried about his own future and he takes an immunity deal to actually reveal what's happened in the Trump organization. Almost by default, with an organization that big that has existed in that environment for that long, there's going to be something.
Yeah. All right, I want to make sure to get into have enough time to get into y'all's topics, so let's take a break. Back in a minute.
I prefer you not saying y'all on the program.
Well, I'm going to say y'all.
I would say
so let's deal with it. I live in Texas. That is standard talk here. Got used to it.
I know. That's all.
Jason, I hope you're not about to disparage my fellow Hispanic.
Yeah, am I allowed to actually say anything critical on him?
We'll just call you a racist.
Call me racist.
We actually should just start calling him O'Rourke. Why are we going along with this, Beto? Why do we have to go along with this?
So like
because it's on the sign.
I know, and that's all that's on the sign.
That's all that's on the sign.
That's what I was going to say.
Does this word sound familiar to you? Vote for him. That's just straight up what it says.
So my wife is Hispanic, and so she
sees a sign, hits the brakes.
She instantly thought it was a Latin political candidate. She doesn't follow politics at all, but she goes, oh wow, she's running against Cruz, two Latinos, and she was like getting pride, and I was like, no, that's not the case.
No.
But anyway, so this week the latest polls show that he's only 4 points behind Ted Cruz, and I'm kind of wondering why Cruz isn't really kind of, I don't know, maybe just going to the mattresses a little bit more, because if he doesn't, start taking this seriously, he might be in some trouble.
What his strategy is at this point.
I think he is. I think he is. If you look at, this is where Ted Cruz always gets underestimated. When he won against the Lieutenant, Governor Dewhurst back in the day, how did he win? He went to every single little small town in Texas. Yep. And he went there and he would speak to 5 people or 15 people or 30 people. There was no audience too small. And if you look at his campaign schedule and you look at where that RV's been going, he is going back to those little small towns, grassroots. He's not doing ballrooms in Dallas and Houston, and he's doing fundraisers, yes. But I think the reason why you say, like, where is he, is he's literally out there, not in the places where the cameras are.
But then to me, that might be more frightening that the polls show what they show.
And in the metropolitan areas, I don't know.
No,
like,
I think
all you see is Beto.
Yeah, I think they disproportionately go in and poll big areas, which is exactly what happened when Cruz was supposed to lose to Dewhurst last time. Remember, he was not supposed to win. Yes. They showed him down. I think they oversample San Antonio and Austin and Houston and Dallas. I think that's how they do it. And he totally whooped his tail in all those little counties. And my guess is, I think it's wrong. I think he's going to be up. I think he'll win the thing by 8 or 9.
I hope you're right, but it was weird. Like, I lived in California for like 15 years, and some of the friends that I had that are still there that are very hardcore liberal, I'm seeing that they're posting stuff that Beto was saying. Like, they were posting his. He just did
his kneeling.
Yeah, his kneeling is
famous. Yeah. It's also, I mean,
LeBron James retweeted that for crying out loud.
Yeah, which I think actually only helps Cruz. I really do. I mean, if you get 1 million retweets and they're all from New York or California, none of them can vote legally, right? They might bust them down here and try, but legally, I don't think it really. I think he's going to be just fine. I think he's going to be laughing on Election Day when his go back to my roots, humble myself, and be that candidate that speaks to everyone and shakes hand. And he's one of the hardest working campaigners I've ever seen.
So the optics on Beto are O'Rourke is that as the optics on this guy is he's like just I don't know he's like he's the young guy he's skateboarding in Whataburger parking lots he's just a swell guy
while kneeling
while kneeling
the only thing missing is like the Mexican flag on the shirt on the bottom of the skateboard
so it's been really curious I hadn't heard anything really negative beyond the Republican Democrat usual typical like anti-gun all that stuff. But
income tax, just the normal.
Right. Yeah. So I just saw, actually, one of my buddies over at Red State, Brandon Morris, just released an article, I think it was yesterday, and I was reading through it, and he had all of his research, backed up in it, but I was reading some stuff I haven't seen anywhere. And one of them is when he was at on the city council in El Paso, he almost got ran out of there for cronyism and corruption. Have not heard that anywhere. And it was pretty bad. It was so bad that his fellow Democrats were trying to get rid of him and trying to do a recall. Because they're like, this guy, we can't have this much corruption in the city council. This guy's got to go. And it was so bad. The guy's worth about $9 million is his net worth. Whatever, that's all good. But some of the ways he was getting that $9 million is kind of suspect. One of the cases was he was really big on eminent domain. He wanted to snatch up private land. Really big on eminent domain. But when they looked into the books, the contracts that he was granting to people after seizing the land were companies that his companies were doing business with, providing services for. Not only that, but on one case, one of the contracts that he granted it to, his father-in-law was one of the executives in that company. So, I mean, but this was just there's a laundry list of these things. And
the moral story is we don't have to worry about your land being taken because you've got last names, you're covered.
Correct, yeah, we're good.
in serious trouble. We are serious, Ferguson. It's just not going to go well for us.
All right, is it time for a new AG?
I would say yes, and I would say mainly because, one, you serve at the pleasure of the president. Clearly the two men are not getting along right now. I also think that the reason why the AG initially recused himself was the honorable way to do it. Mm-hmm. There is no honor in Washington, D.C. anymore. There's no statesman in Washington, D.C. anymore.
You think he should have recused himself?
I think he should have initially.
Oh, I disagree.
But I'm saying from a statesman standpoint, if you actually had a Congress that was appropriate and you went back in time, that is the honorable thing to do by the lay of the land, the law, if you have statesmen you work with. There are no statesmen in Washington anymore, so let's stop acting like it. My point is this. He knew the Senate. He knew how corrupt it is. He knows how shady it is. He knows how Democrats are going to react. I think he should have said, I don't trust you, so I'm not going to recuse myself. Hindsight being 20/20. I think it was on paper the right, honorable thing to do. I think looking back, allowing this to get to where it is right now, where there's no one that's been charged with collusion, you have people that are going after people that gave money to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and their kids. I mean, the things where this has gone now, to the insanity it's gone to, I think clearly he underestimated his colleagues in the Senate and the House and how this would be explode with a special prosecutor, which he knew was going to get appointed. There was no way, as soon as you recuse yourself, you were setting this up for the political gift of a lifetime, for the Democratic Party, for Trump's presidency. He knew that was going to happen. He knew how angry they were, and I think clearly he underestimated that. My point is, I think it's time for him to say goodbye. And look, the president, I think, is trying to force him out. And the rules, and a lot of people, it's the nuances they don't understand. If he resigns, the president has a short-term appointment that he can make that doesn't have to go through the Senate. The Senate's already said they don't want to appoint someone before the midterm elections. And so I think what the president's doing is he's trying to force him or try to get him to resign because he doesn't want to fire him. Because he also knows that he can't fire him. I mean, I think Trump's a pretty smart guy. If you fire him, I think everything comes even more, and then Congress responds and really tries to put you in a noose.
The way I see it, I'll use since football season's about to start, a Cowboys reference. So I kind of see Trump in this as being Jerry Jones, and he sees Jeff Sessions as Jason Garrett. Now, we'd all like to have Bill Parcells probably back, or we'd like to have Jimmy Johnson back.
Right.
We'd like to have Tom Landry. But Jerry Jones could not strong-arm some of those people. He knew that he could push. He can push Jerry Jones around, and I kind of think it's the same case. I think Trump knows that eventually, maybe he does bully Sessions around a lot, more. But I think that why fire him when you think that you've got a guy in office there that you can actually push around and beat, bully around? There's no reason to fire him at that point.
I don't know if he thinks he can bully him. I just think that he thinks I'm going to make him miserable and let him know he has no confidence. And I'm going to make him defend himself, and I'm going to make him look like he's
publicly.
Embarrass him, and eventually he'll say, "I'm out." Because when he has fired people, it hasn't worked out very well.
Well,
if you don't believe me, there's a guy named James Comey. Ask him how it worked. It's not exactly.
Well, that's actually the definition of bullying. You either force them to quit or you force them to do your bidding.
Yeah. But it's so important for him, I think, for Trump to get someone that he actually trusts. And get somebody in there that actually starts to, I think, take it, the point he made about, be in charge, act like you're in charge, stop deferring, stop going, oh, I can't do this because I was on the campaign, oh, I can't do this because I know Trump. At some point, be the Attorney General for the United States of America, you're a member of his cabinet, you serve at the pledge of the President. If the President's lost confidence in you, clearly it's time for you to go.
To take it out of sports for a minute, Trump is to Sessions as Michael Scott is to Toby Flenderson. If you remember that relationship, he constantly would berate Toby all the time and say he was horrible. Yes. But he never actually fired Toby for whatever the reason is. I think there's a... Because I agree with you. I would disagree with you on the recusal. I think that was actually the right thing for him to do at that time.
How?
He was in the campaign. He falsely testified about meeting with these people, and I think it was an understandable distinction. He met as part of the Senate. But
guys, I seriously have a disagreement on that. It was ridiculous, the allegations against Sessions. That while he was a member of the Senate, it was part of his job description to speak to people like Kislyak.
Right. So he should have just said he did.
Should have said that.
Should have said he did.
But I think his
didn't say he was smart.
I think his point,
that's not how the testifying works, though. I forgot all my meetings.
You get a pass.
I think it was a legacy move. When he recused himself, I think he thought, it is ridiculous what this will turn into, so it probably won't last very long. I will be the statesman. I will say that I did the honorable thing, and I recused myself. And clearly he did not understand how much the Democrats wanted to destroy him and the entire administration and Trump.
It's true. However, all the people that are doing the investigation now that instead of Sessions, are all appointed by him. This is not just a Democratic effort, right? These people were appointed by Donald Trump. So the fact that this goes on, I think, is an issue where,
Do you think the president's point? My last thing is: do you think the president's point when he said yesterday he should have told me if he was going to recuse himself is a valid point?
Yeah, that's a valid point.
Okay. All right. Let's take a break. Back in a minute.
That's valid. He should have told him.
Yeah.
But again, when
you on the job, sure.
All right, we've got about 30 seconds left before we hit this thing into overtime. Ben, can you tell everyone where they can listen to you?
Yeah, you can easily just go Facebook, Twitter, Ben Ferguson Show in there, and then you can click on it and listen and watch and all that fun stuff.
And it starts at what time?
My show's from 4 to 7 Central the afternoons, radio show, and then we do Facebook Live for an hour at 6 o'clock Central.
Okay, awesome. All right, make sure, Blaze subscribers, catch us on demand to get to overtime. We'll see you there.